Thank you for joining us. My name is Katie Dolegowski with Life Science Nation, and I am happy to introduce the Neuroscience of Aging panel. This panel will be led by Anastasia Litt, Director of Investor Relations with Deep Knowledge Group. Over to you, Anastasia.
Thank you, Kathleen. And to start with, I would like to introduce, I could say, our star team of the panelists that we have tonight. Here we have Lu Zhang, founder and managing partner of Fusion Fund. Lu Zhang is a renowned Silicon Valley investor, a serial entrepreneur, and a Stanford engineering alumna. Lu is a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. She has also garnered other accolades, including the featured honoree of RESI of Forbes 30 Under 30, Silicon Valley Women of Influence, Town and Country 50 Modern Swords Entrepreneurship Influencer, and was recently selected as the best 25 female early stage investor by Business Insider. Lu Zhang is also on the jury board of Cartier's Young Leader Award. Prior to starting Fusion Fund, she was the founder and CEO of a medical device company. And Lu is a frequent speaker at tech conferences and conferences such as Davos World Economic Forum, Future Investment Initiative, Forbes, Web Summit, Super Return, etc., and serves as a mentor or advisor to several tech innovative programs in Silicon Valley. Also, we have tonight James Meyer, who is a senior manager, investment and venture services, Center for Aging at Brand House Innovation, or CABHI. James Meyer leads investments and venture services at the Center for Aging Brand House Innovation. He invests in innovative house tech solutions from around the world that will optimize the cognitive, emotional, and physical well-being of aging adults. Also, we have Ranjan Nag, who is PhD, Managing Director and founder of Air42 Group. Professor Ranjan Nag is an inventor and entrepreneur. He's an adjunct professor in genetics at the Stanford School of Medicine, becoming a Stanford Distinguished Careers Institute Fellow in 2016. He's a founder and advisor board member of multiple startups. His companies have been sold to Apple, BlackBerry, and Motorola. More recently, he has worked on the intersection of AI and biology. He has been awarded the Mountbatten Medal and the Royal Institution by the Institution of Engineering Technology, and has been winner as chairman and Bunsen Imogen of the $1 million prize for Verizon Powerful Answer Award. He has been a pioneer of smartphones and the app stores they depend on. He was awarded by the 2021 IEEE SCV Outstanding Engineer Award and the 2021 IEEE USA Leader of the Entrepreneurship Spirit Award. Professor Nag has a PhD from Cambridge, a master's degree from MIT, and bachelor degree from Birmingham in the United Kingdom, and is an adjunct professor in genetics in the Stanford School of Medicine. So thank you for joining our panel. And here comes the first question that I would arise. Could you describe in brief what the funding landscape looks in your domain these days? Are these like more early stage companies or more major? Do you find many age tech companies on your radar today? Who will be the first to answer this question?
I'll take a stab. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's great to be here. I'm in charge of R42. I mean, the landscape, we invest in the earliest stage companies, in AI and longevity companies. And in particular, we pay attention to neuroscience. Now, as people might know, it's a phase 1 drug has got a 5% chance of getting to the end. In Alzheimer's, it's a 0% chance of getting to the end. So when you see investments in Alzheimer's, and that's a ripple effect in the neuroscience area, there's certainly sort of a bit more of a higher threshold in looking at these companies and seeing what they can do. Why do they think they can get a result? So that's on the drug side. I think we see a number of players on the medical device side. We're an investor in Cordance Medical, which is an ultrasound device to actually create blood-brain barrier leakage. As we know, there's a barrier between the blood and the brain to stop our brain getting infected. But the only problem is we can't get drugs to the brain if you do that. So Accordance Medical, they're trying to actually create little leakage points for a few hours so you can get drugs to the right place. So that's sort of a device area where there's a lot of drugs that could work for the brain, but we can't actually get it there. There's another company we're looking at, let's see, which is Keto Swiss, which is it's a medical food that you can take to simulate a keto environment without going on the keto diet. And so that is providing food to the brain in a more efficient way. So we still see quite a few things at the earliest stages. We do work a little bit at the late stage, but mostly on the early stage, and we're still seeing investments being made. I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. James, would you like to step in?
So I'm not a life science investor. We are health tech, med tech, diagnostics, non-invasive medical devices. So
Okay.
I think from my perspective, I think I'm lagging a little bit, so I'm just going to turn off the camera while speaking. I think from my perspective, we were seeing an investment gap, especially for early stage, so companies before Series A. There wasn't really, over the last 3 or 4 years, there wasn't really a lot of dedicated venture funds where their investment thesis was 100% longevity or age tech. I think what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, and especially since the global pandemic, has brought the importance and need for solutions that are helping aging adults, but also older adults live more independently at home, or to help them keep their independence longer. And it makes sense just because individuals over the age of 65, they're growing rapidly, but they also control so much of the wealth, and they basically control the decisions. And so we're starting to see more and more dedicated venture funds coming. So that investment gap technically we're seeing probably 3 or 4 years ago in this area is kind of going away, which is great, but there's still a lot more, I guess, venture funding required, and not enough VCs dedicating to the space just yet, but I think it's changing.
Mm-hmm. And Lou, would you like to add your opinion on it as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So we invest in both deep tech and healthcare. Within healthcare, neuroscience related, especially, apply AI solution for healthcare focus on aging population. Another thing is any solution focused on mental disease is one of our focus sector. So in terms of the funding landscape, I think in general, there's more and more capital coming to this area, mainly because, the apply AI in healthcare application. And when we look at the mental disease, mental well-being, neuroscience application, AI really bring lots of new opportunity, help us find better correlation for better diagnostic, better personalized diagnostic treatment plan, and better monitoring. Also, because of this new trend, I think lots of the traditional AI investor, they're bringing capital to this sector. So I think this is a really, really good market timing for the founder in terms of have a variety of different background capital coming to this sector to work with them. Definitely on the other side, I think the whole private sector got impact from the public market. The volatility in the public market really push lots of the I would say growth and late stage investor are pausing or stop their allocation to make around this year. But on the other side, if we look at the total number of the capital, this year Q1 only, we still have almost a $4.8 billion capital coming to relative earlier stage investment. And some of them came to the healthcare in general, and the mental disease and the neurology disease, etc. So I think, yes, temporarily the market probably have much less active capital than last year, but in general, there are lots of dry powder in the VC industry right now. And I think else on the other side, in terms of the market timing, it's a really good time for founder to start explore innovation solution right now.
Mm-hmm. And regarding the perfect timing, like, can we say that this is a perfect timing for the early stage startups? Do we see the shift of the investors to tend to invest more in early stage companies than in more later stages?
Yeah, so I think I could continue here. So yes, there are more capital coming into earlier stage. For example, last year, I mainly focus on Series A, and also we prefer to be the lead investor, take the board seats. So last year I was competing not only with other firms focused on earlier stage, but also traditional growth stage focused firm like Sequoia, Andreessen, even Tiger, even SoftBank. And I think this year the pressure, the reset of the valuation and the reset of multiple pressure in the growth stage, it also pushed lots of the growth stage VC capital considered coming to earlier stage. So I think, yes, you're right. There's more capital came to the earlier stage. And meanwhile, I think there's also lots of non-traditional VC capital coming to the earlier stage.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Lou. I think, in early stage, almost by definition, it's sort of the unknown, the risk. It's more of understanding the problems that we have to surmount, the number of investors that are frightened of that area, and say, look, let's take less risk and go later stage when it's proven out, more proven out. But I'm seeing that in the later stage, they're more equated with the public markets. In the earlier stage, the valuations are relatively low, higher risk. It's probably 5 years out before an exit. So the public markets have less relevance, I think, for a seed company going in, sort of starting now. I think there's this overhang, of course, of the overhang market environment. If you've lost lots of money in the regular stock market, that tends not to put you in a good mood in the early stages. But I think I'm not saying this. I mean, I went through the dot-com crisis, and we're nowhere near that yet. But I'll stop there and let Jamie comment.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very early stage, almost like sometimes at the idea, pre-seed and seed. I think there is still some type of funding gap for deep tech companies, just because of how high risk and how ambitious the hypotheses that they're trying to validate, especially companies that are trying to predict the onset of diseases, for example, Alzheimer's disease or forms of dementia or Parkinson's, whether it's through blood draws or analyzing MRI or CT scans. It would be, as an investor, it's sometimes, really hard to invest in these companies when they're still in the labs. It's still super risky. And so it would be great to see a lot more non-dilutive grants that come in to de-risk, venture investment. Additional SBIR grants in the US or additional PHAC grants in Canada or even UK grants, just because the pathway for these very ambitious AI machine learnings are a lot longer, sometimes 12 or 14 years to really get them through the market. And so it's sometimes very difficult from a venture standpoint to invest in them. And so there's somewhat a little bit of a gap, but maybe not so much as more grants to accelerate them into the market faster. The money's there, it's just our risk tolerance is not.
Yeah, I think I would say, in neuroscience, biotech, I mean, there is the option, there are availability of grants. In, like, if you're doing the e-commerce website or something, there's no grants, right? So there are some incentives, I think, out there to make it a little bit easier at the earlier stage, that we don't have in other industry segments. But yes, unfortunately, unlike engineering, we have where we have laws of physics. In biology, our laws are much fewer, so there's much less controllability.
Thank you. It was really interesting. And speaking about the early stage startups, like imagine I'm the CEO of some neurotech startup or age tech startup. How should I think investors so I would succeed and get the funds for my startup like at the very early stage? What should be my mindset?
Well, if it's a very early stage, and I think Jamie is going to be great in commenting here, but it's sort of like, you've got this, certainly, I mean, we could just say sort of standard, well, it's the people, the team, your background. I'm often asking, look, you're going to spend 10 years of your life on this, right? And forget the money that we're going to put in, but you're going to put 10 years of your life on this. Why do you think that the idea that you're proposing is going to work in 10 years? It's 10 years of your career. And usually that's thinking about a mechanism of what they think is going to work. It's a story also. If you can simplify the story, you're going to have a wider set of investors. Often when I tell young biotech entrepreneurs, if you make it so complex that only postdocs in your lab can understand it, that's great if you're the postdocs of venture capitalists. That's usually not the case. And so if you can tell the story, simplify the story, can you be the Carl Sagan or the Richard Feynman of your field, and simplifying what you're trying to do so the investors can understand it. And that increases the financeability as well for later on. I'll stop there and hear other comments.
Yeah, a lot of that is what I agree with. I think my perspective changes depending on what type of solution that they're bringing to the market, whether it's like a deep tech, so very expertise focused. It would be more on the team and their credentials and what's their background or their PhDs in technical hard sciences, especially if they're building some type of diagnostic. If it's a digital health solution, I really like to see why they're solving this problem or in the familiarity with solving it. So if they're building a workflow solution that's going to make the lives of clinicians easier, and the barrier, there's not too much of a barrier bringing it to the market, and they don't really need FDA. So it's more of, why did you pick this idea? Is it from your previous experience as an operator? And so I really dig into the team. The other areas I just like to look at is, have they built up a resiliency in their life? Have they failed? Like what Raj is saying, you're going to be doing this for a long time. Running a startup is all about failures, and so are you used to that and how you overcome that. And then I also like to dig in if have they thought about a plan B? I sometimes shy away from people that can easily go back to their day job when things get tough. So if I wouldn't pick on clinicians, but if you're a doctor that's just tipping on to start, if it doesn't work, are you just going to go back to being a practicing physician? So I really dig in as if they thought about a plan B and would they go back to that in transition. So it depends. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
Lou, yep.
Yeah, so happy to add more. I think I really agree with both panelists mentioned. Just adding a little bit more, for example, like for us, we invest in seed and Series A, so definitely different stage or different have different criteria. And for earlier stage company, sometimes they may not have strong commercial traction or market validation, which is okay. But I really want to see founder have the mindset of want to have quick technology market validation, even at earlier stage through different type of partnership pilot program. Another thing is, I think really important for this area is we invest in deep tech and healthcare. So we definitely have lots of opportunity interact with technical founder. And I was a technical founder myself before. I was doing research, then become an entrepreneur. So I really understand the challenging sometimes for a researcher to adjust the mindset from purely, I'm going to pursue the best technology, to in practical running a commercial company has to think about, yes, technology is important, but also other thing is important. What is better, also faster, and also cheaper? Whether the target market is big enough, whether the go-to market could be scalable, whether execution could be done, etc. There's lots of non-technical important part in running the company. And I think that's very important piece that we want to see from the especially technical founder, assuming technology is already good enough with strong differentiation. I think another thing I want to highlight here is especially within healthcare sector in general, the founders sometimes do not really think from an investor's perspective. Consider, which type of exit as a VC fund manager we're looking for. For example, for lots of the healthcare company, the potential exit will be merge acquisition. And certain type of merge acquisition will be limited to a price. For example, some type of medical device company may eventually only sold for less than $100 million. Or certain other healthcare application, it will be good for, quick merge acquisition exit pipeline instead of go for billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar IPO. Then founder need to think about, okay, for the investor I'm raising money from, which type of exit they're looking for. For example, for my fund, we have in total over $300 million under management. My latest fund is $120 million. So if the company potential exit is lower than even like $100, $200 million potentially, it would be very hard for me to justify my fund return just quickly to do the math. So sometimes founder did not think about this angle, that they did not realize maybe they're talking to the wrong investor or wrong VC with a certain size of the fund. So I think that's the part I really want to share that with the founder, because when I was a founder, I did not think about it. After I become an investor, I realized, okay, sometimes the mismatch is also because of the type of exit both founders looking for versus the investors looking for.
Yeah, I think it's obviously risk adjusted, right? So depending on, I think that's a very good point. Investors, they may be willing to take a lower exit, but they also want to lower risk. I think the other comment, like going back to Jamie's comment, the team itself, I'd like to look at balanced teams, particularly in this age of where we have machine learning applied to many different problems. Often I see firms that are started by actually non-life science people. They come from the computer science area, basically the computer science groups, and there've been many examples where machine learning has come up with a result in a few months where the incumbents have spent a decade trying to solve, and vice versa, right? Where we see teams that are full of biochemists but have no machine learning people but trying to use it. Now, I like to see one of each. I'd like to see the biochemist, the machine learning person, an MD, an FDA regulator background, have balanced teams. So when you prepare yourself to pitch to investors, and so have you checked the box and say, okay, you've got a gap, and okay, how are you going to fill it? Is that a supplier? Is that someone you're going to hire? Instead of being able to address those questions.
Okay, thank you. So we understood that the team and like the balanced team and their experience is really important for an investor. But also, like, speaking about early stage startups, like seed startups, what level of the data should they provide to an investor? Could it be an idea on a napkin, as we say, like simple deck, or should it be a deck supported by some P&L with traction or MVP? Like, what is enough approach to an investor?
Well, I think it goes back to Lou's comment. It's got to be the right investor. So the napkin investor, maybe, I think it sounds like Jamie, maybe that candidate. You can comment. Where actually we prefer it. We want to come in at lower valuations, idea stage. We're looking, why do you think this? What's your intuition? Maybe you've had 20 years in this particular field, so your intuition is actually more important. We value that more versus if you just had an idea the last 6 months or so. Then if you're trying to get a higher valuation and you need a different kind of investor, maybe that's Lou, right? They've gone a bit further along, haven't got everything figured out yet. And so you're there. If you're really late stage, I've got 100 scientists, I'm in phase 2, already, and then that's yet another kind of investor. So I think all of the above is right. And often on the ventures investor side, we're always teasing each other, saying, well, don't do seed investing because they haven't got the product market fit and they haven't done this and haven't done that. It's way too risky. You have to wait till series A. Or wait till Series C, or do mezzanine, but just before IPO. That's the best time. It turns out everybody is right. So investors play in what they're comfortable with.
So, Jamie, according to your experience, what can I say?
I mean, I'm a little bit later than a napkin idea. I mean, what Ron was saying is, it's all correct. I mean, the amount of research you need depends on the investor. I'm not so much more, the research I look for based on my perspective, if I'm looking at it, it's obviously they haven't done their pivotal study. I want to see a lot of non-dilutive grants and, just, some great algorithms or great, research within the lab, or they're just coming out of the lab and they're doing their first maybe, real world feasibility testing. That's kind of where I like to see whether there's enough evidence that this idea isn't crazy and that those hypotheses can be validated. And that's kind of what I look for making my investment. And so there's a healthy cap table and a lot of non-dilutive grants. What I look for more importantly than the next step research, if the problem that they're solving makes sense and the team, I believe in the team, is more about the regulatory and reimbursement pathway. I find so many companies just focus more on the regulatory hurdles as opposed to the reimbursement. And so they're not necessarily doing proper customer discovery from a business mindset and figuring out who's going to be their payer down the end. I really like to work with companies when they focus on their next step future trials, is they have the hypotheses set up for their RCT trials or your clinical trials, where if they validate these hypotheses, it makes sense for the buyers at the other end, and they're structuring their trials that satisfy both regulatory and reimbursement. And so if I see companies that have done a lot of research, but they're validating the wrong things, that's when I get alarmed.
Lou, could you add?
Yeah. So by typical earlier stage, the first check is range from $1 to $3 million. So it also depends on the round size and the check size founder are looking for. So if I'm doing like $2 to $3 million investment into a relative bigger size of the seed round, or even to potentially Series A, definitely we're looking for more validation point, including technology validation, including market validation, including partnership validation. But for the company, for example, raising a smaller round, I also have flexibility to write a smaller check, like $500,000. That's the smallest check I could go. Then maybe founder are still relative early stage with much less validation point, but still have a clear, business plan and also the strategy in terms of next step, how to achieve that validation point. So I think essentially founder have the right mindset is really, really important. I just also want to add in another thing about, I also heard some founder, even at earlier stage, they are talk about, okay, we have the technology, we have this solution. Why do we need to have a deck? Especially Y Combinator doesn't really help that. Lots of funders prefer not to make a deck, try to raise money. So my point on that is, having a deck is not only just purely only for fundraising and to talk with investor. It's also a very good way to show to investor the thinking process. It's not only technology, it's about as a CEO, as a founder, how to think about running a company. From market opportunity to technology to execution, go to market, to the team, to potential exit scenario, using the deck to really show the thinking analysis process. That's one important part of preparing a deck for the conversation with VC. So I highly suggest even for super early stage founder, still come over to the investor, even you're raising very small round with a comprehensive deck. to show that even you're still early, technology is still early, but you really think it through. Lots of things may change later on, but having the right mindset, a perspective is very important for a mature founder.
Great, thank you. So imagine I would like to approach an investor to share my idea and so on. How easy is to get on your radar? Do you use referral network, or is it just like, do you talk to founders who reach out on LinkedIn or like cold emails? How it's happening?
Well, I think it's I think certainly the early stages, I don't think we don't have much difficulty if people want to contact us, as they can just send us an email. We usually try and react to each one. And basically the decision process that we have to think of, well, we have too many inquiries to meet with every single person. So we have to decide, okay, is the story strong enough just from the one email? That do we like it? Does it resonate? And to take a meeting. Now, our fund, R42, we're quite active in the academic circles. Certainly at Stanford, MIT, Cambridge in England, and Berkeley. And so we've put a lot of effort getting our name out there, and so people know about us. I give lectures all the time. I love to give lectures here. Maybe there's some people here in this audience. They can just send me an email, ronjohn@r42group.com, or they can go to our website and submit a form, or they can submit to one of my staff. And so we'd like to try and think that we're easy to access and not aloof. So go out of our way to try and not to be aloof.
Jamie,
I'll let the others, how they contact Lou and Jamie.
Our group gets, I mean, it's pretty standardized how VCs get. I mean, there's both push and pull. I mean, we go through PitchBook, we get news feeds, we attend demo days at accelerators. And so when we're scouting companies, you know, that's one way. So if you pitch well, or that's one of the easiest way we make investment decisions. The other way is, you know, the inbound companies, you know, reach out to us and we get them through, you know, when we run just a standard, you know, cohort, similar to Y Combinator, companies apply and they go through our selection process, or they reach out by email, or we get introductions from founders. I think if you're ranking just through introductions, obviously it's a lot easier to get on our radar if you get an introduction from someone we know, whether it's a founder we funded, or an organization that we've worked with, or a research that we've known in the past. You'll have a higher chance of success rate, or you can just do cold call, which I think eventually we get around to it. But it's probably the weakest form to get on a VC. It's not a bad thing, but then it just comes down to your writing skills and how fast you get to the point, and how well you tailor your messaging to the fund that you're reaching out with. And so if you hit all the right areas and you massage or tailor your messaging, I mean, hopefully you'll get a response faster, right? Because we get hundreds and hundreds of emails a day, and you know, we can't read every single thing and go through the pitch book. And so knowing the VC you're reaching out with and tailored messaging, you'll get a response faster if you can't get a introduction to the VC.
Mm. Yeah, so totally agree. Just adding to a couple points. First thing, it's really for founder important to also know your investor, means do the research before reaching out to the investor, including whether this is the right firm for you to work with, whether they're investing to your sector. Another thing is, even within the same firm, whether this is the right partner to reach out to. We got lots of inbound every day. For example, we only do deep tech and healthcare, but they still got founder reach out who are doing a consumer company. So I think this is kind of the first step of founder. Before doing reach out, just doing some research, make sure you reach out to the right person. And second thing, as Jimmy mentioned, referral is always the best way to get in touch with the investor like us. investor referral could be through like other investor, industry expert we know, people we know on the linking, like connection. And also for me personally, I really like founder referral. For the founder I work with before, I know if they send me a good founder, I really believe good founder knows good founder. So I think that could be a very efficient referral channel for founder too. And in terms of cold reach out, I have a couple of suggestions. First is don't send super long email. As both Jamie and Roger mentioned, we got hundreds of email, even more than that every day. If it's a long email, then probably gonna, okay, skip it, read it later. But read it later means I probably won't get back to it until a couple of days, even weeks later. Another thing is really understand what to highlight to VC, because the first thing all the investor are gonna think about is, first thing is not the technology, it's actually how big the market is. So make sure for your bullet point, the first thing you could highlight is how big the market your target big enough market is the first important thing for VC to consider investing a company opportunity. And then talk about your differentiation, talk about your metrics, talk about your team, make it precise and straightforward, and use that content for the cold reach out. In terms of for us, reaching out to us, definitely for me, my email is lujian@fusionfund.com. I always welcome founder to reach out to me. Another channel is through the linking messages.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one more question is about the technologies. Like, for example, in Technology Group, we use our like innovative technologies dashboards to compare the companies, to get like SWOT analysis and get the information about the market. And what is your process of gathering intelligence and monitoring certain sectors or companies? And so you analyze them and start a dialogue and moving forward. And what is a typical time frame for getting a deal done with a startup?
Right. So I think in deep tech, deep science, these kinds of things, almost by definition, it means that you're going to have to analyze the science. So the way I look at it, I'm just going to assume I know nothing about it, and I want the founder to explain it to me from first principles, literally first principles. And often they, as we start to get deeper and deeper to even people quote unquote in the field may need to have that explanation. So I don't feel embarrassed by asking that. I don't feel stupid by asking that. And that's also sort of a test, going back to the storytelling. Can they explain the science, the technology, and then does it make sense? Does it kind of make sense, right? It's to actually get does the science make sense with everything you know about in your general science knowledge? And so that's how I look at when I listen to companies. And then the time, even if I like it on day one, I usually like to spend 3 weeks or so noodling about it, thinking about it, asking a few questions back to the founder, and then checking the environment.
Jamie, anyone wants to add?
I mean, I'm sure it's pretty consistent. We constantly, like the sectors we invest in, we try to be just, I wouldn't say complete experts, but more than a generalist in each of them, especially, the areas don't really change, at least in our fund. So we get that, market intelligence reports all the time, and and then when we meet companies that I like and not necessarily ready, they're just entered into our CRM, and we constantly follow them. And so a lot of the times when we want to invest in companies, we're reaching out to them instead of the other way around. So that's some of the ways we find companies. And then everything that Ranjan says is I agree with. I think it takes roughly 3 to 4 months for us to make a decision to go through our selection process, just because the companies that we're supporting have very, very ambitious goals and really difficult hypotheses to prove. And if they work, they're going to disrupt not only a process, but also have a dramatic shift in terms of reimbursement or FDA approval, et cetera, because the companies that we end up supporting are usually diagnostics that are diagnosing someone, predicting disease states. And so it takes us a long time to understand in depth the process, where does it fit into workflow, the amount of evidence that we need, the reimbursement pathway, and in going through and understanding their AI algorithms. So for example, one of the companies we supported invested in, RESI, they were developing a non-invasive retinal eye scan looking at the interocular disc to assess someone's risk factor for dementia 5 years before clinical symptoms. And so, getting to an investment decision took a long time with that, not just understanding the hardware's perspective and how they're going to build it and the cost, but also, the team that is assessing this algorithm, what their RCT trials are going to look at, and the data that they need and all that. So it takes a long time to get an investment decision.
Yeah, I would say same here. Especially, I think the sector focused on deep tech and healthcare really require comprehensive due diligence from technology to market to the team to industry reference and regulation and insurance, everything. So the whole process may take months. Another thing is even before we talk with founder, every quarter we do comprehensive industry research report to make sure we always not only have the domain expert in the sector focus on, and also update our knowledge about what's going on the tech side and also on the market timing side. So I think that's really important for us to also make sure we're prepared to work with a different type of tech owner and the technical founder. And also we like to also engage with founder when they're even now start thinking about fundraising. And while engaging with founder, we also like to make some key introduction to how founder, meanwhile, and also to see how fast, how efficient the founder to execute it. The connection resources we're building. That's also part of kind of a light due diligence to help us making decision faster later on.
Thank you. And my next question would be also interesting for the startups and founders. After your investment, after closing the deal, do you consider your involvement in the startup, like in how they work and so on? And what type of the involvement usually goes with you as an investor?
Yeah, we because it's early stage companies, we usually think that we need to interact. We don't necessarily need to be on the board, but we do need communication. Often we don't find that out until after we've invested, whether the communication is actually there. But we'd like to sense there will be strong interpersonal synergy. And so the needs that usually we find we have to provide is experts to put around their company, either as on the advisory board or other board members or team members. And then other syndicate venture investors for the next round, where we need to make sure that the story is crisper, the team is more balanced, the data that they have, that they can they get to a data milestone of some kind wherever they are in their stage, so that when when I talk to Jamie or Lou, I'm not embarrassed by what I'm presenting to them. So that's probably in the back of my mind. That is it presentable for the next stage investors.
I mean, from our perspective, we're kind of unique because a lot of our funding comes from different levels of government and foundations, and so a lot of the additional things that we'll bring to the table, similar to an accelerator or just value-added services, just because they're just funded by the government. So we're very hands-on if the company wants. So for example, we'll provide the companies with access to scientific officers, or clinician scientists based on their pain point, that are there to coach and mentor them, validate their clinical protocols, help them with REB submissions, etc. We have access to healthcare organizations across North America. So we have a 250 database of organizations that we have LOIs with. So these are companies that can test, validate, or the company can conduct customer discovery calls with. The broader Kale services that we're a part of housed within in Baycrest. These are just a research methodology center that are also available for the companies. So we have a whole gambit of services that I think we're just unique because we're funded by the government and that are made available. So we can be very hands-on if the company wants it, because we're both purpose and profit. So we're not really at 100% focused on financial returns. We're really focused on validating the right solutions that can improve the life of older adults. And we'll bring capital, but as well as a whole bunch of free expertise to help you be as successful as possible.
Yeah, so for us, for actually roughly half of the company I invested would prefer to, we actually take the lead position, which means that we have the board seats. So definitely there's a different of engagement level for company who have board seats versus the one with didn't. But in general, I think we're quite engaging. We really try to leverage our experience and network to support a funder. And also another thing is we really want to make sure have the right balance, because I know the best founder really hate micromanagement. So while supporting founder a lot, we also want to make sure we're more just empower the founder to be at a better position instead of making decisions for them. Give the right level of the governance and support, but still enable the founder be the captain and be the one really make the final decision for the company. So in terms of specific support area, the first thing is really the fundraising piece, because lots of founders will work with our technical founders. So for technical founder, they're great in terms of developing technology solution, but how to work with the capital market, how to really have the right funding strategy, fundraising pace, working with the right investor, how to structure the round. That's the thing we really help founder to make sure they could run a super efficient fundraising process, especially after earlier stage when they're raising Series A, B stage. And another one is really help them with commercial validation. I launched a network called the Fusion Fund, the CXO network in 2018. And since then, so far we have 42 CTO, our executive from the global and southern company. Lots of them are from healthcare sector. So I have CTO members from like Medtronic, from Boston Scientific, from United Health. So all this network, all this individual engaging in the network, it's really try to build this platform for founder directly talk with a key decision maker of the industry, then they could understand better about market timing, potential explore, partnership, collaboration, and even contract, like commercialize the revenue. And then we could really help founder once they have a mature, finalize the product offering, they could quickly get the market validation. And for healthcare specifically, we also provide, we have couple regulatory advisor we work with for different type of a healthcare solution that we could really help founder better engaging with FDA to go through the approval process much faster. The last piece is kind of relatively new. We built up last year. It's really recruiting platform. We built an in-house recruiting platform last year since we heard lots of founder complain about how difficult for them to recruit talents with a reasonable compensation package. I hope this year with the reset of the market in the public market, hopefully it's not that competitive for early stage founder to looking for talents. So we still continue to try to support founder with that, especially when founders start to think about build up the remote team. Because of COVID, everyone's thinking about building a remote team to leverage lower, talent costs in outside Silicon Valley. So we try to help them for them to build a team in Pittsburgh, in Salt Lake City, in Toronto, where they could also benefit a lot from the local talents and meanwhile control the cost of operation.
Great. Thank you. It was really interesting. And one more question is regarding the future. Like, for example, everyone speaks about the super tsunami is coming. And for example, Technology Group, we consider the number of elderly people, they form the seventh continent. Like this is a number that is growing and it's growing, and we can see the shift of the population every day. And that's why we can say that interest in the longevity, age tech, neurotech is growing and growing. How do you see the future landscape of the market in the next few years? Do we need to have more age tech startups, or is it enough to fulfill the market right now? Anyone?
Well, I think we're not at boom stage yet. So I'm not sure we need more, but we're certainly not at boom stage yet. It's not. I think over the next few years, you're seeing a few signals, with the Autos Labs investments. I think in the next couple of years, you'll see some exits, and that's going to put a light on the area. I think we're probably relatively pioneering still at this stage. I think if you're an age tech investor now today, I think it's still relatively still a pioneer, but maybe in a couple of years' time be less the case.
Yeah.
Yes, I could chime in here. I think we definitely we want to see more company come into the neurology disease area, aging tech, because as you mentioned, the global aging population challenge. And another thing is, I just feel like for the past couple of years, we're really going through this singularity point of lots of technology being in the research for the past probably 7, even 10 years, finally ready for commercialization. Another thing, this social pressure from aging population really push out this insurance company, regulator, want to learn and want to empower company providing this type of solution to go to market much faster. And the last thing I want to also highlight is we have lots of conversation and discussion about apply AI to healthcare, apply AI for neurology disease, apply AI for aging, longevity. When we apply AI, one of the important foundation we're looking for is how much data AI could leverage. And if you look at all the data we have right now across different industry, more than 30% is actually healthcare related data. So we have a very strong foundation to apply AI for healthcare. So I think definitely that's also another really exciting things for founder to explore opportunity here.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think it's really hard just to innovate in healthcare. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of barriers to cross, and people are very risk averse in comparison to the other verticals. So we're very slow to adopt new and exciting technologies. This is more and more technologies is great. I think the biggest proponent for the adoption of these technologies, especially AI and machine learning, is the changing of reimbursement and the comfortability of not just state and government payers, but also people in the role AI machine learning has in making active decisions in their health. Right now, there still needs to be most of the time a human on the other end to vet. And so I think that eventually will change as the technology gets more and more validated, and we get a bigger data sets, because at the end of the day, people are living longer. They want to maintain their independence as long as possible, and they want to live and age at home and have very fruitful lives. And wearables and technologies will play a very important role in that. And relying on the decisions of these technologies is what's more important, instead of having to have a human on the other hand. And I just don't think we're there yet. Maybe in the next 5, 10, 15 years, but hopefully we'll get there one day, I think. Yeah.
So thank you. It was very interesting. I suppose like now all their founders, they know what to do. They know that they need to have a balanced team, proper mindset, good technologies. They need to show that they can prove the validation like of their market profit, market share, and so they need to show the investor, and now they know how to engage with the investors and what is expected from them. So thank you, it was really amazing.
Thank you, Anastasia. That's our time for today. Thanks also to our panelists and to our audience. I saw that some of our panelists dropped their contact information into our chat. You can also reach them on our partnering platform. And thank you guys for being here. Have a great RESI and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.